My name is Connor Ryland, and this is my final Info362 infographic. First, I'll be talking about the visual potential and encoding of my various displays. First, I'll talk about my appearance display. In my appearance display, I exploited the visual potential of electronic music by borrowing one of its most recognizable tools. Nothing really makes you think electronic music by sight alone like a DJ's deck does. I decided to use this as my appearance display and to incorporate other music-related icons like vinyl records and headphones that you'll see later. Dance music became what it is today because it has always been a worldwide phenomenon. Different people enjoy the same music in tiny clubs across the world, while at the same time, two people can be making and performing wildly different music in the same club on the same night. I wanted to show the extreme journey that electronic music has had across the map, and the impact that location had on different genres of dance music as a movement. I chose to show the routes of influence on a map because I think it is the most interesting way to visually represent the journey, showing how reggae music from Jamaica evolved into high-speed drum and bass music, the same way disco from New York became, through many genre evolutions, 200 beats per minute hardcore in the Netherlands. I primarily used position encoding to show the geographic distance between genres, but also line treatment to show the relationship between them. I used curved, dotted lines to denote the travel of a genre from one place to influence the creation of a genre in another place. The end of these lines, there are arrows to show the direction of influence. I also used size encoding to show that the eastern United States and the United Kingdom are the most important places on the map where most of the major genres originated. Dance music is filled with numbers. In fact, much of the foundation of many genres is in numbers and math. 4/4 rhythms with kick drums on every beat, tempos of 120 to 130 beats per minute. Those numbers make house music, just like many other genres that have numbers defining their identity. I exploited the visual potential of numbers in many ways. First, I created two graphs to show the rise in popularity of house subgenres versus techno subgenres, as well as the popularity and inception of music festivals over the years. I also exploited numbers in my relationship display to group different genres by their tempo. And finally, in comparison of the two record labels, Dirty Bird Records and Desert Hearts. I wanted these all to fit the appearance and music theme, so I chose to display them as bar graphs styled like audio waveforms and decibel meters. In my numbers displays, I mostly use size encoding. The size of the bars denotes a higher number. I also use position in the two displays that incorporate time to show the difference in number for each year as time went on. I also use position encoding, dividing the display in half in two of the displays to show a comparison between two different things. The left display is divided into top and bottom to show the difference between house and techno, while the upper right display is divided into left and right to compare Dirty Bird and Desert Hearts. One of my main goals for my infographic was to visually display the relationships between genres, where they came from and what made them unique or similar to other genres. My relationship diagram shows a web of subgenres that stem from three different root genres: house, techno, and UK garage. Electronic music's history is riddled with influence, emulation, and remixing of other people's styles. Many genres are related to others in unlikely ways. This can also be seen in my location display, as I talked about before. The relationship between genres started in Jamaica, the United States, and the UK, and how they all combined and influenced each other has a lot of visual potential. Additionally, the relationship of genres over time and how they developed is explored in my timeline, which I'll talk about next. There's a lot of encoding in my relationship display. The large circles use interaction encoding to group genres into tempo groups. Line treatment combined with position, specifically the downward angle of the lines between each small circle, creates a hierarchy showing the subgenres below each root genre. In my timeline, I explore the visual potential of music's rich history, showing key points in the evolution of electronic music. I chose to use a classic left-to-right timeline in order to most effectively and most minimally present a large amount of nuanced information. It is interesting to see the creation of the Moog modular used by bands like Pink Floyd in the beginning of the timeline versus the mainstream appeal of music created with computer software with huge bass and repetitive beats at the end of the timeline. I mainly use position encoding to show the passage of time from left to right. Now I'll be talking about my various models and the parts of my infographic that I emulated. First, I'll talk about color. On the left is my color model, and on the right is my final infographic. As you can see, I used the exact same colors and color scheme. The color scheme is a complementary color scheme consisting of an electric blue, a goldish yellow, white, and a very dark blue that appears black. I was initially drawn to the high contrast, bright colors on a dark background. I used this in my infographic because it created an association with nightlife. The electric feel of the bright colors with the mysterious darkness of the background reminded me of the way spotlights in a club cut through the darkness of the night to create an atmosphere for dancing. I use yellow and blue in the white description text to highlight key words and phrases in order to help the reader take away the most important information. I made the borders around the main displays white so that the information appears contained and organized to the viewer. I could have used a bit more white in the infographic overall to make the colors pop a bit more, specifically in the icons, as you can see in the top right, as the color model, which you see in the top left, uses all three colors heavily in the icons. I also could have used black text on a different color background, as the color model often does that, as you can see on the left as well. I could have used a bit more color encoding, as a lot of my decisions to use color were more based on an aesthetic than encoding. On the left is my typography model, and on the right is my final infographic. I used Adobe Typekit to analyze my typography model and found the typeface to be the Gibson font family, a sans serif typeface that is fairly simple and does not distract much from the information. As you can see, my title is different from the typography model. This is because my typography and visual language models conflicted, and the large block letters from the typography model looked out of place with the rest of the infographic. For the rest of the headers, I used Gibson semi-bold, as they do in the typography model. For annotations and description text, I used Gibson italic like they use at the bottom of the typography model. I chose italic to make it easier to differentiate between headers and annotations. For labels, I decided not to use the all caps identity labels in the model and opted for lowercase instead, as they took up too much space in a lot of my displays. For my precision labels, I used a very small Gibson font in white, so that the text stands out despite its small size, as you can see with the +10 on the bottom right, which comes from one of my number displays. I mostly associate labels with their information by having them close together, almost touching, so that it's impossible to mistake it for another piece of information. In some cases, I use color to associate labels to information, like the white headers over the white circular displays in the main infographic. Overall, my typography is all left aligned and as minimal as possible except for the main title. Here you can see my visual language model. My visual language model consisted of a lot of circular shapes with thin line treatment and mostly outlines with minimal fills and solid textures. I thought this would fit perfectly with the shape of the DJ decks, as you can see. I used the large circular shapes to enclose important information like they did in the visual language model. I stayed very true to the line treatment in my model, using thin straight lines for much of the layout and graphs, while keeping the large arc-shaped lines they have in the model, specifically the combination of thick and thin arced lines. I included a map in my infographic that matches the more organic lines and shapes of the train routes in the model. Along with the organic shape of the map, I kept the large circular shapes from the model, which helped draw attention, seeing as the rest of the infographic is rectangular. Last, I followed the model somewhat closely for the icons I created, using mostly lines and minimal fills. However, the icons I created lent themselves to a more minimal design than the realistic and detailed train icons in the model. Next, I'll be talking about my layout. As you can see, the layout is fairly simple. The model on the left has 3 main upper sections and 1 main lower section. I resized each of the sections, however, I wanted to keep the general feel of the layout model, having 3 main upper sections, as you can see, the right DJ deck, the mixer in the middle, and the left DJ deck making up the 3 upper sections, and the timeline on the bottom taking place of the bottom section in the model. Next, I'll be talking about the visual hierarchy of my infographic. As I mentioned earlier, I created visual hierarchy through the use of color. White stands out in the display since the majority of the colors are yellow and blue. And I use this to highlight each of the different displays in my infographic. Also, the variance of shapes creates a hierarchy, specifically the large circles. The eye is initially drawn to the circles on the left and right of the infographic because they are the largest shapes and they stand out against the rest of the display, which is mostly straight rectangular shapes. The viewer will likely read the large left section, then the large right section as their eyes are drawn to the large circles, then hopefully move their eyes to the timeline at the bottom, and finish with the more random facts in the middle. I think I could have done a much better job with visual hierarchy. My display ended up being too symmetrical to create much visual hierarchy because I wanted to keep my layout in the shape of DJ decks. Next, I'll be talking about unity and variety. I created a unity in my infographic by using color. The bars in all the bar graphs are blue, and the outlines for all of the displays are white. In a similar way, I use shapes to create unity. Both the left and right sections contain a large rectangle and a large circle that enclose the most important displays, in order to make the infographic symmetrical and give it a sense of order. There's a lot of lateral unity, as you can see in these screenshots. The titles match up across the infographic, as you can see, using the same color and typography. For example, the titles for the two number displays, which are in the top screenshot, and the titles for the displays in the circles, which are the bottom screenshot, match up horizontally. From top to bottom, there's more variety, as you can see in this screenshot. You can see the yellow title with the rectangle display on top of the white title with a circular display, creating a lot of variety with color and shape. The horizontal unity in my infographic creates an easy-to-read symmetrical layout, while the vertical variety makes the infographic more interesting to the eye. I think I could have played around more with the unity and variety a bit to create a better visual hierarchy, as I talked about before. Last, I'll be talking about the alignment in my infographic. The elements in my infographic are center aligned in their respective sections. They are overall aligned to create symmetry. I opted for symmetry to make the infographic balanced and aesthetically pleasing when viewed as a whole. I aligned the displays in distinct sections separated by the blue lines that create the outline of the mixer to make it easier on the reader to break up the reading. I think I could have used alignment better as a tool to group related information together and further tell the story I was trying to get across. For example, I could have given each section a theme like house music and aligned all of the information on house music into a single section. Overall, I'm happy with the way my infographic turned out. However, I could have put a bit more focus on information encoding rather than general aesthetic appeal. Thank you for watching.